All right, we're on chapter 55 on the corruption of nature and the power of God's grace. Book 3, Interior Conversation. So the disciple is starting this morning and he says, "O Lord, my God, you have made me in your own image and likeness. Grant me this grace which you have shown me to be so great and so necessary for my salvation, to overcome my corrupt nature, which drags me down to sin and the loss of my soul." Okay, this is a very ripe little verse here for Vedantaizing this teaching. You know, this idea that God has made us in his or in that own image. You know, that image is non-gendered. And so even though his is the traditional way of saying it, I just want to emphasize that our divine image is not gendered. Our divine image actually is not a physical image at all. It's that divine principle of pure, unconditioned love, that principle of a deep and abiding wisdom, and that principle of existence, being, manifesting, being able to be both manifest and unmanifest simultaneously. So playing our play in the world of change while being rooted in the knowledge of our unchanging absolute existence, which gives us that wonderful stability. But of course, that's the self of realization, to come to know of your root in the absolute unchanging is realization. But there is no manifestation of that absolute unchanging, which is why it gives us such a difficult time trying to find that space, because it's a space that requires literally unmanifesting ourselves. So that the more silent you can become inside, the more absent of thought that you can become inside. And the more you can place your awareness within your own awareness, or your awareness on the presence of the beloved within, that is when you come to know of your true nature. And so he says that God has made us this way. And he says, "Grant me this grace, which you have shown me to be so great and so necessary in my salvation, to overcome my corrupt nature, which drags me down to sin and the loss of my soul." Okay, so we can definitely leave it that way. You can definitely think in those terms. But I don't like the idea of using me and mine with the corrupt nature, because it's the use of me and mine with the corrupt nature that causes us to be under its control, because we believe ourselves to be that. So, and then that's my one beef with the way you run into Christian, I guess, theory speak, or the way they talk about their metaphysics and whatnot, is that this corrupt nature, they own it. Adam's fall was my fall, and now I am of a corrupt nature. But that is not an accurate way of talking about it. We are still the pre-fallen Adam. We are still the image of God, as God made us, incorruptible, ever pure, ever free, ever blissful. And it's because we stepped into the senses. We joined Adam and Eve when they stepped into the senses, began to be attracted by the sense world, and then began to turn to the sense world for that self-identification, for the idea of who we are, and turn to the sense world for our ideal of trying to fulfill this inner knowing that we are not corrupt. And we try and find that fulfillment through the senses in the sense world. That's what causes us to be dragged down to sin, or to adharma, to unhelpful living. And so if we can just break that from the corrupt nature, so that we don't own it as it being our own, that's really where we're trying to go. That's what we're trying to return to. That's the return to Eden. You know? He says, "In my flesh, I see the law of sin opposing the law of my mind, leading me into bondage." Okay, again, very, very close. It works to talk about it like that. But to see the law of sin, that's more a delusion of sin. than a law of sin, because the law of sin is basically anything that doesn't lead to unity, anything that doesn't lead to oneness, would be what the Christians would interpret as sin, what we would call adharma, or just unhelpful living, on making unhelpful decisions in your life. And that does, in fact, lead us into bondage. And what does that bondage look like? Well, that identity with our fallen nature, that identity with body, with the sense world, body mind, causes us to think that the body's desires and that the mind's desires are our own. We don't see ourselves separate from those desires. That is bondage. That is slavery. And we have to break that identity. We have to come to know our divine nature within, which is an absence of manifestation in its truth, but not entirely. There's a little bit of a gray area in there within which the devotee and the beloved exist together, and can sport in this world in a way that's not adharmic. But it's still a touch of delusion, a touch that we actually exist, that this is not a dream, and that I'm not a dream character, but I'm actually me in the world. That's the delusion. And so to not think that that freedom, this is one of my very pivotal moments when I understood. It happened in a very funny circumstance, which I can't really publicly share, but where I understood that I came to a moment where I had withdrawn from the mind quite a bit, not in any supernatural great way like that, but just had kind of pulled myself inward, and I felt that lightness, that freedom of being for a moment, and I heard my mind echo to me, you're free, you can do whatever you want. What do you want to do? And I heard that while I was kind of third partying myself, standing off watching myself. I heard the mind say that to me. Normally, I would have thought that was me thinking that. But in that space, I could see that was the mind just echoing itself, just doing what it does. And I also understood that was the fundamental problem, that we define freedom as being able to do whatever we want. But we don't want. When you go internal and you realize that you're not body and not mind, those are the only two places that desires arise from. Those are the only two places that hunger and imbalance arise from. And it's that hunger and that imbalance that cause us to pursue things that are satisfying to the body and to the mind, because we forget that we are that ever free, ever pure, unchanging self who is radiating through body mind. And actual freedom is to have no desire, to be fully content in the moment. My coffee has arrived. So to know that you are not body and you are not mind, that's why it's very helpful to do that little practice that really has changed the nature of my practice significantly in the last year, is this going inside and becoming intimately aware with how your body is represented in your internal world. How does your body tell you that it's sick? How does your body tell you that it's hungry? How does your body tell you that it's tired? And to become intimately aware of how the body manifests itself to you, the watching, the observing self within, and to become intimately familiar with its language and its means of how it does that. And also the same with mind, observing the mind, not stepping into the mind and using it thinking that you are thinking, but observing the mind thinking. The mind thinks, you do not think. The mind thinks, and that thought is the wheel of samsara. Every thought of the mind comes out of the previous thought. You cannot break that series. That is how you know you are not the mind, because you cannot interject an original thought into mind. Every thought is born of the previous thought. And so become intimately aware with how the mind communicates with the divine self, with you, the observer, ever pure, ever free, ever blissful. and understand how it works and watch it carefully and never stop watching it. Our goal in our spiritual practice is to maintain a state of constant awareness, a state where we don't go to sleep. We don't fall into the rhythm of routine and habit, but rather we stay awake in that space, aware of body mind, because all desires, all discontent arise from either body or mind. And when you feel that discontent arise, begin to form, if you stay observant in it, it's very easy to snub it out and not be pulled out of your center. If you're not watching and that grows and you identify with it, the mind, you get caught in the mind, and the mind creates a state of awareness, which means you're no longer able to see the truth of the moment. You're no longer able to experience your contentment. You're caught in a bowl of identity that you can't see over the edge. And that's when it becomes a struggle in spiritual life. That's when spiritual life becomes difficult. And the longer you stay in that bowl of a state of being, the more decorated it becomes, and the more convincing it becomes, and the more trapped, the more bound you are. So this is what he's saying. He says, in my flesh, I see the law of sin. So see, he's got that awareness going on as a devotee inside. He sees the body, he sees the mind, he sees that the law of sin, that the tendency toward that selfishness by identifying with it. And he says, I see that it opposes the law of my mind. We're not going to say mind because that's not accurate unless you're talking about the universal mind that is transcendent to the individual mind. So we're going to say more than just his embodied self, the embodied self, that the law of the embodied self, which is pure love and pure wisdom through being. So he sees that the body mind tends to corrupt that contentment. When you identify with body mind, you lose the bliss. Most of us are never again aware that our nature is blissful because we've been pulled into the mind and we're constantly clawing at the dust of the earth, like the curse in the garden says, for our contentment. We're beggars. We're begging the world and our senses for pleasures to bring happiness and fulfillment to us. That is the curse of the Garden of Eden. That is exactly what happens when we step out of our pure nature and step into the idea of being body mind, and then owning all of the desires within body mind, and through that forgetting our nature. And the reason it's so easy to forget that nature is because it is absolutely content. It makes no noise, it makes no fuss, it doesn't make any there's nothing there to find your way back to. And this is why they say that this is why you have to do it by not this, not this. You have to back into that awareness, right? That true self. It can't call you because it is the ever present, ever content, unchanging absolute. And so finding your way back there is a matter of rejecting anything that's pulled you out of there, because you are there naturally. And your nature is a divine bliss. But that divine bliss is so steady and constant that the mind filters it out as white noise. It won't let you experience it as long as you're identified with mind. So it's a very difficult place to be. So he's saying, in my flesh, I see this law of sin opposing the law of my mind, leading me into bondage, so that I incline more toward giving in to my sensual inclinations. See, he's really struggling here, because you see how many places he's using I and mine to talk about sin and to talk about his sensual passions and desires. So he's not aware that it's the use of that me and mine that's causing him to suffer like this and causing him to have to cry out to God for help, because he hasn't broken that identity with body and mind yet. So that I incline more toward giving in to my sensual inclinations, nor am I able to resist these passions, right? And that's because he sees them as his passions. He sees them as things he wants to do. I want to go have sex. I want to go drink. I want to go smoke. I want to go whatever it is. not understanding that is not the truth. You do not want those things. And if you can manage to be the observer within, you will see the stress, the pain, the alienation, the loneliness that those ideas of being cause in you. When you become aware that every pleasure in the world is like a wave, you'll get the pleasure, but behind every wave is a hollow. You know, behind every wave there's a lull, and you can't have the pleasure without the pain. It's the yin and the yang of the Tao. You know, you cannot have pleasure without pain, and the more intense the pleasure that you get in that moment, the more intense the pain that follows. You know, and so our discernment, our inner discernment, is to look carefully so that we know that our quest for pleasure is also a quest for pain. And so we have to see that and understand that, and seeing that as a coupling, as a real, as the truth, will help you in breaking that identity, and to not see the desires as being your desires, but understanding that the desires are the discontent nature of things in the world of change. Right? So this is why we want to be the wise person who builds his house on the rock. The rock is that unchanging nature within, and not be the foolish person who builds his house on the sand. The sand is the mind, the constant changing nature of the universe. And we're always trying to find our contentment in the constant change of the universe. You cannot do it. You can't build a firm foundation on the beach. You can't do it. So don't try and do it. You know, stand firm inside and know. He says, so that I'm inclined, this identity that he's having, that he believes himself to be body mind, is causing him to give in to his sensual inclinations and not to be able to resist these passions, unless your Holy Grace comes to my aid. And what is the Holy Grace? It's just the momentary remembrance. Hey, this isn't me. That's grace. Or the name of God that passes in, or the turning toward the divine image within yourself and taking refuge. That's grace. The ability to think of God, or instead of using that word God, if that's uncomfortable, to think of freedom, to think of expansive love and wisdom in the moment. That's grace. So if you can counter your desires by remembering, look, I'm already created in this perfect state. I'm created in the image of God. You know, I have in me an innate purity that can't be soiled. I have in me an innate love that cannot be restricted, you know, and you're to be able to remind yourself of that. That is a direct manifestation of the grace of the beloved of God. So unless your Holy Grace comes to my aid, reminding me of my nature, taking the eyes off of the sin, off the body mind and its desires and pleasures, and infusing its fervor into my heart, which really is not an accurate way of talking about it, because it doesn't infuse. That's the experience, absolutely. So he's talking from the deluded self. From the deluded self's perspective, yes, it feels like God infuses us with this divine love. But being aware of the presence of God is the same as being aware of yourself, of that divine nature, because God has placed that image within you. You're one with that image. And so you're not infused, you become aware of this divine bliss, this divine strength that is within you. And so from the dark side, it looks like you're being infused with God, with God's grace. From the truth side, you're returning to what has always been. You're stepping out of the delusion of being separate from that, of being in need of that. In order to overcome nature, I need your grace in great abundance. That is absolutely true. Because what happens is when you get into these states of mind, into these states of being, of delusion, you start owning the price of it. You start feeling guilty. You start feeling the shame. You start feeling the lust and the desires, and you take them on as being your nature. You know, we can even see that he's doing that here actively in this scripture by using me and mine to talk about them. And then then to stand in the presence of God is actually painful. You know, to stand in the presence of God and try to hold your delusion together is painful. It can't be done. And so grace you either have to instantly stop doing all of that or instantly stop identifying with all of that, which is possible but extremely difficult. Takes years and years of hours a day, many hours a day of practice to do it like that, right? So it's the divine grace that kind of short circuits the need for that intense effort and allows you in the moment to lay down the things you've identified with. It gives you permission to lay them down, not be identified with it, so that you can walk into the presence of the beloved without shame, without fear, right? And that is why all of the incarnations have spoken of this grace and given you the permission to use their name, to use their perfection as a shawl, as a prayer shawl, when you walk into the presence of God, so that you don't have to drag all of the nonsense that you're caught up in into the shrine room with you, to give you that permission to learn to accept that you are free all the time. You don't have to carry this stuff around. You don't have to pay the price for these things. You can escape the karma of the mind. You can escape the idea of time, space, and causation, which is what causes you to have to carry this bundle of pain with the insistence that you somehow have to pay for it, that it somehow has to be worked out. So in order to overcome this fallen nature, this wrong identification, I need your grace in great abundance. For this nature of ours is ever prone to evil, even from its youth. Okay, that unfortunately is true. The mind mother says, the divine mother says that the mind naturally tends downward, which is why we have to take the light of our divine nature and evaporate it, make it rise upward instead of pooling in the lower regions, as it were. So this nature of ours is ever prone to evil. And what is evil? You know, evil is such a charged word. Evil has no independent existence. Evil is just not light. It's not a thing in and of itself. It has no power in and of itself. The only power of ego is forgetfulness of evil, and ego too. And the source of that evil, the source of that forgetfulness is egoism. So in Vedanta, the name of Satan is ego. You know, so you can replace the idea of ego of Satan as a character, which is not helpful because they've made him, in the Christians in their theology have made him way too powerful. He does not have near the power that is ascribed to him. We see that actually in the book of Job in the Old Testament. Satan has to go to God to get permission to tempt anybody, which makes me wonder what's the necessity of having Satan around, you know. Just go ahead and admit, you know, the mother is playing and she's responsible for both the light and the dark, but she uses them both to express her love. All right, so I need your grace in great abundance, for this nature of ours is ever prone to evil, even from its youth. For it was defiled by sin through the first man, Adam, and the penalty of that stain has descended upon all humankind. Okay, true and not true. Not true in the sense that we do not live within time. We live in this moment. And the idea of original sin is a misunderstanding. There is no past. The past is a figment of the mind. It's a concept of mind. The fall of Adam did not happen in the past. The fall of Adam happens in this moment when you look into the senses and look into your body mind, find something beautiful that causes you to desire it, and then gives you the false idea that you're going to get something from it that's going to fulfill you. So this Garden of Eden story did not happen at the beginning once long ago. This Garden of Eden story is a looping story that is happening at this moment. At this moment, you're looking at the sense world. If you're finding it beautiful, fine, but understand that that's dangerous. When you look at it and see something beautiful, look through that beauty at the divine manifestation behind it. Make it think of God. Make it make you think of God. Don't make it make you think that you want it. That's the mistake. See the beauty, love the beauty. The beauty is God, but recognize it as God. Don't recognize it as objects. and do not desire it, because you can only see it because it exists within you. That is how you know beauty. When you see that divine nature reflected in the world, in the sense world, it causes desire because you're attracted to it, because it is the wholeness. It's a reflection of the oneness. It's the reflection of the beauty. But remember, it's a mirror. So don't go try and kiss the mirror. It's not going to be satisfying. It's going to lead you into very problematic habits. So don't do it. All right. So all of this, so it's not something that we're stuck. We are not stuck in this state by blaming it on Adam that happened eons ago and that we somehow have to suffer for it. That makes you a victim. God does not create victims. God creates powerful, ever free, ever pure, loving beings who can manifest at any time they choose, who can return to their nature whenever they're ready to do so, through his grace and through his love, her love, that love. It is always available in this moment. If you fall, it's not because you're a victim, it's because you chose to fall. If you stay deluded, it's not because you're a victim, it's because you have chosen to stay deluded. Take that responsibility, stand in grace, take refuge in the divine, and be free from it. None of this mealy mouth wimping around. Oh, my mind is so this. Oh, this is so hard. Oh, I can't do this. You know, let me slap you silly in the moment. Stop it. Come to your senses. Pull yourself together. Remember your divine nature and take refuge and get over it. Move on. Be free. Stop it with the suffering nonsense. To think that the very nature you made so good and upright is now captured for sin, only by your decision in the moment, right? You see how mealy mouthed this sounds? You know, when he talks like that, to think that the very nature you made so good and upright is now captured for sin. It isn't captured for sin. You're clinging to it for its enjoyments. You know, it's captured by you for sin. God didn't, is not sitting there like, just just don't think like that. Don't bemoan. Choose. Get up. Don't sit there and weep and moan about how difficult and how sad and how broken and how dirty and how guilty and how deluded and how suffering. Blah. Get up. Take hold of grace by the horns. Own it. Stand on it. Turn to Mother. Take refuge and get over it. Forget about it. Move on. Return to your freedom. So listen, he goes on to think that the very nature you made so good and upright is now captured for sin and corruption to the extent that its purely natural inclinations always draws us toward evil and base desires. Do you see how he's dug his grave? If you're going to believe that way, give up. If you're going to believe that way, write your death warrant. There's no hope for you. This is all within you. Your divine nature exists always, unperturbed, unsoiled. It is never guilty, never shamed, never dirty. It cannot be wetted, it cannot be burned, according to the Gita, right? Remember that. The only thing that's drawing you to evil is your insistence that you are a body and you are a mind, right? And it's not some super cosmic thing called evil that's running around in a black shroud with armies of demons ready to, mess you up. It's not like that. It is all down to you. You are the light itself. You are the image of God. And the only things that pull you in that direction is your insistence that you're not that you're a little body and that you're a little mind, and that the little pleasures that your body want to give you are what you want. And the little pleasures and moods that your mind presents you are what you want. Stop it. It is not what you want. It is what the body and mind do. That's their nature. They live in a world of constant change and instability. Naturally, they are always hungry and always needy. You have one foot in the divine reality, ever free, unchanging, absolute. You are unaffected by their conditions. You do not have to choose to be subject to them. And in that, find your freedom and your strength and your light And I never want to hear this kind of mealy-mouthed, poor me, isn't it unfortunate? How sad. Oh, I wish that it wasn't like this. Wouldn't it be better if? You have the power of God within you to manifest a Jesus, to manifest a Buddha, to manifest a Rama. If you choose just to manifest, your everyday house husband, your everyday housewife, your everyday whatever, that's fine. That's your choice. Live that life, but live it knowing that it's a dream and enjoy it. But don't forget it's a dream. Don't forget that your real nature is a Jesus, is a Buddha, is a Rama, is a Krishna. Live the life that you're living, but with the knowledge of what you really are. Play your play, but know that at any moment you can take the mask off. Have that freedom. That's what spiritual practice allows us to do. That's where we want to live. And so the little strength and inclination to good still remaining are as small spark of a fire hidden among the ashes. Okay. Oh, what a wearisome place to have to go. Yes, your life can come to that state. It's true. You can. And so little strength and inclination to good still remaining, that poor little me that's still crying out to God and somehow finding some satisfaction in being a wounded little bird that needs help. You, you know, there is a certain egoistic satisfaction to that, which is why we go there, but it ain't real. It ain't real. It ain't real. Right. So this little strength and inclination to do good still remaining are as a small spark. That is his problem. It's a small spark because he's walked so far away from his nature. It's in the distance. It's a tiny spark in the distance for him. This is a raging fire of all the suns in the universe combined. A small spark. Of course, that's like saying, yes, that the sun is the size of a period. It is, right? Because we're far away from it. The sun is inconceivably huge. And if we draw near to it, everything that is temporary in us burns away into ash. And the self is manifested as the sun itself, right? So all the little strength and inclination to good still remaining are as small as a spark of fire hidden among the ashes. This is our natural reason, which, though surrounded by much darkness, is still able to discern good from evil and the true from the false. Oh, God. Yes, that's his experience. Yes, that's where the writer lives. But please, by the grace of your beloved, don't follow him there. Don't follow him there. This idea of such weakness and such smallness and such an unchanging sentence to suffering is in the imagination. It's in the imagination. It's what happens when you chose to forget. It's what happened when Eve looked at that fruit and saw it being beautiful and forgot God instead of being reminded of God. So don't see beauty of the world and forget God because of it. See beauty in the world and remember God for it. That is the first key. If you can stay there, you'll be all right. So see that beautiful person, acknowledge their beauty, even celebrate their beauty as you tell mother how beautiful she is, or tell father how handsome he is, or tell son however you relate to God. But see God in all the things that attract you. Understand that is why you're attracted. It's because it is of God. Do not go to steps 2 and 3 that Eve fell to and Adam followed. Step 2, thinking that there's something there for you. That it's something you can take. You can't take it. That's why 60% of marriages end in divorce, because we walk into marriage thinking, oh, I'm going to get something from that other person. And that other person has married you to get something from you. You got two broken people trying to get something from each other. What is that? The divine nature is to walk into a marriage with what you have to give. And you marry somebody who's looking at you with the idea of what can I give? And then you have two whole people coming together and creating a dynamic, beautiful, healthy marriage where nobody's trying to eat the other person. right? Where two people are nurturing each other and taking care of each other's needs in a proactive way. That is your divine nature. That is the way it's supposed to be. You know, that's the way it can be. Let's remove that word supposed to. That's the way that it can be and is in the divine realm. Yet it is unable to carry out all it approves, nor does it possess the full light of truth or its formal wholesome affections. Okay, that's fine. Those are all excuses. You can definitely go in that route and find some solace for your failure by thinking about it that way. Oh, it's been divinely ordained. Oh, here I am, a poor, contrite beggar of God. Oh, please give me some grace. Oh, please help me. You know, meanwhile, you're suffering. Yes. Be like Yvette and the dog. That's God and you together. All right. All right, we got time. All right, so number 3. Hence it is, O my God, that inwardly in my soul I take delight in your law. Okay, finally. Finally, you know. And it's not God's law, it's your law. It's the law of your divine nature, that image of God that he's placed within you. If you think it's God's law, someday you're going to resent the tarnation out of God. Why do I always have to do it your way? Why are you the one that gets to make all the decisions? What about me? What about me? What about me? Because you've forgotten, you've not realized that your ideal self is God. Those are your laws. You wrote them before you entered into this play. You're the one that put the scriptures there for yourself to find when you entered into the dream, in the hopes that it would help you find your way back again. So it's not the laws of God, it's the laws of your highest nature. These laws allow for the highest expression of the love that is in you, right? Yes, idea, don't have sex. That doesn't mean you can't have sex like in that sense. It just means that if you do that, you're picking one person above everyone else, you know, to love and engage with. And so you will be limited in your expression of love to these small little people that you find attractive. And that group, if you keep going and expressing your love through that carnal or through sex like that, the people that you love, the qualifications get higher and higher and higher, and you're able to love fewer and fewer and fewer. If you withdraw into yourself and you need nothing from anybody, you don't have to go to a person to get pleasure from them, then you can love without condition freely. That's the whole point of that purity, of that, even that word purity is messed up for me from my background, but you know, that unselfishness. People are not there for our pleasure. That's all the law says. And what a beautiful thing that is. We're not there to eat each other. We're not there to consume each other. That's not the fact that in modern society that we've even accepted somebody calling us a consumer. What an insult of a magnitude unimaginable to call me a consumer. That just shows you the degradation of our society, how we have bought into this idea of complete delusion and let go of the divine nature inside to refer to each other that way. Well, so anyway, step off my soapbox. Hence it is, oh my God, that inwardly in my soul I take delight in your law. Finally. And in your teaching, for I know what you command is good. I know that it is just. I know that it is holy, both for the reproval of all evil. Oh, that's like saying, you know, a light bulb is good for reproving a dark room. Yeah, you can talk about it like that way. It just makes you weird. The nature of light is to drive out darkness. That's why we have lights in the ceiling, you know? So why make this a big thing here? You know, for both the reproval of evil and for the avoidance of all sin. Yeah, that's true. You know, a light bulb is for the avoidance of tripping in the dark. Absolutely right. But why not just say a light bulb? Why not just keep your eyes on the light instead of glancing out of the corner of your eyes at the darkness that's being driven away? Because that only makes you aware of it, which is a dangerous thing, because you might see something beautiful that you think can give you something and you might want it. That will make you whole. So think only of the light. That's why you take refuge, when when you're faced with something that's trying to draw you into the body, draw you into the mind, take refuge. What does that mean? Identify it. Say, does that desire come from the body or the mind? Sit there and consciously figure it out. Ah, that's one of the mind. And then look at it straight on and say, I am not the mind. So that's not my desire. That's the mind's desire. And then you take refuge where? In that divine light, this divine law that he's just celebrating, in the wonder that is you. And how do you do that? By turning into it, looking at it, putting your whole attention on that, turning your back on what's going on in this external world, this seemingly external world, right? And be yourself. Be free. Don't be trapped. Don't be convinced that you have a desire, that you have a need for something. Remember that no, I'm eternally content. I am the highest source of love of the universe. The sun shines because of that light within me. I recognize the sun because I know it within myself. Yet when I prefer to obey my senses rather than my reason, I serve the law of sin. Well, yeah, okay. What's the point of saying that? Obviously, but you're not serving anything except body mind. That's all it is. It's not a big, weird cosmic truth like this. just you're just deciding to serve the body or to serve the mind. And if you do that, there's no end to it. The body and mind are endlessly needy. They are always insecure. That's why every advertisement out there is trying to fix it. And what happens if you go and obey all of that stuff? You become a monster. I remember this every time I stand in line at the grocery store and I see all of these uh, uh, celebrities, and their efforts to never grow old. And you see what it does to them in time. Are they thinking, I just can't, I mean, therefore there I go. I'm not judging them for that, but I'm just saying, don't miss the opportunity to see where that leads. You see that it increases your insecurity, it increases your graspiness, because for those poor souls, those celebrities, they've built their whole life and career and fortune on being beautiful, being desirable. And to watch that slip away, think of the pain of that, think of the pain of that. And don't be deluded. Think how awful it is. That's why the Christian scripture says that the wages of sin is death, right? The wages of believing yourself to be the body mind, look at what's happening to the Kardashians as they grow old. Just watch this train wreck as it happens. I don't mean to make an example of somebody unfairly like that, but they're there for they're like that. They're putting forward that example, so they have to take the responsibility for it. Watch the whole train wreck. Don't just look right now when they're all young and beautiful, right? And say, oh, I want to be like that. Let's add 40 years to this train wreck. Let's see what that implant looks like in 40 years when there's no more muscle tone to hold it in place, when it's sliding down your thigh, right? Let's think about that. Let's be aware. I'm sorry that I'm talking this bluntly, but I think that it's necessary that we don't get delusion. It's a very powerful illusion out there that's being sold to us purposefully to put us in a state of hunger, to put us in a state of need, so that we buy products, so that we reach and do exactly what Eve did, to reach into there and think something out there is going to fix it, that something outside of ourselves is going to make us better. That is the very root of your suffering and your misery. It is the root of your insecurity. It's the root of your hunger. Don't fall victim to it. Do not forget, you are beautiful for one reason alone. You are the divine light, and it has been placed in you and cannot be taken away, cannot be removed. It can be hidden by delusion, but it's never stained. Its nature is never touched. It is always you. That's why you're beautiful. That's why you're meaningful. That's why you're important. And that's why people will fall in love with you. It is never for anything external. Do not forget it. Hold on to that gem. It's your light, it's everything. Yeah, it's everything. All right. So we'll stop there for today.